one of or a few individuals putting in a large amount of money, but there's a lot of different investors participating. So it's been really encouraging to see that uptake. We host these webinars every 2 weeks, and I can see a lot of new names in terms of the people who've joined us today. So clearly, more interest in understanding about Vogo, and obviously this is our first transaction with you guys, and hence people are definitely keen to hear about your business, your background, and maybe with that note we can get the session started. If you could just talk a little bit about your personal background, maybe a little bit about your co-founders, and then introduce the Vogo business, we can get started from there.
Sure, cool. Thank you very much for having me, Nikhil and Vivek. And thank you all the attendees who are here on a Sunday morning. Thanks a lot for joining in. My name is Padmanabhan. I am the co-founder and COO of Vogo. I'll start with my personal background. So I am an engineering and MBA graduate 2010 from ESSEC Business School, France. Post my MBA, I actually started my career with Amazon. I worked as a vendor manager there in France. And I always wanted to come back to India. I always wanted to start up. Even at ESSEC, I'd incubated my own startup, which was an e-commerce startup. It didn't really take off back then. So then I joined Amazon after my ESSEC stint. After some time at Amazon, I started hearing a lot of good things about this new kid on the block, which was Flipkart. This was back in 2010. Very excited that an Indian startup in the e-commerce space changed in India. I was intrigued. I had a lot of friends over at Flipkart, and I had to really, see what it was about. And then I basically came back to India and I joined Flipkart. Spent 3 wonderful years at Flipkart, did a bunch of roles, starting with launching the FMCG categories at Flipkart, like health and beauty, baby care, and so on. And then I was moved into business finance, which was created in 2012, 2013 by Mr. Kalyan Krishnamurthy. He was also the interim CFO back then. So I was moved into a business finance role where I did working capital project for Flipkart. Was very, very important in those days, given that Flipkart was actually giving out a lot of cash before getting cash into the company. Had a working capital of, if I'm right, around 25 days plus. Spent a year doing that, optimizing every part where the cash flow was stuck. Managed to bring it to -5 days, which was really the international standard for e-commerce companies back then. Huge impact project. Learned a lot during that. Developed visibility across different functions. I also learned a lot around how different functions work together. During this time, I think I developed more confidence that, how do I start up? How do I scale? The confidence in me started increasing because I was able to do a lot of things at Flipkart by myself, right? Flipkart was a company where they let you out and they say, figure it out, right? So, so I think that given a lot of confidence. That is where I met my co-founder Anand, who is also the CEO of Vogo, Anand Ayadurai. So me and Anand way back, this is 12, 13, 14, right? So we used to always he used to manage a different category back then, large appliances. He launched and he managed that category back then. So we used to interact a lot about startups and problem solving and market size and what will happen in the country in the next few years. What are the different possibilities the country is giving us, right? So we used to discuss a lot of ideas, and one of the large problem to solve was transport, because for both of us, we used to stay a few kilometers away and then we used to commute to office, and we used to face a lot of problems, right? So every day it used to be the auto bhaiya where you will always haggle and say कि 2 kilometer है आप इतना क्यों ले रहे हो and all of that, right? So this is a common problem that we used to discuss, and I think over a period of time we developed conviction around how to solve the problem, right? Because we wanted to solve the problem keeping in mind what is the lowest cost possible that you can offer to the customer, right? And therein I think the idea of self-drive scooters were born. So back in 2015 we started with car and scooter mix, primarily car as a intercity play and scooter as an intracity play. But a few months into the business, we realized that the scooter was a much larger market and it also solves a bunch of problems for commuters in the city, right? So 2016 was all about testing waters. Does this product work? Does this product address the needs of the different class of consumers that we are going after? So 2016 was spent in testing waters, in understanding who the consumer is, how they would use the product, what do they require out of the product. And then we realized that in 2016 that if we were to scale the product, we had to ensure that the product is autonomous. So back then, say India is still more of a petrol gasoline driven market than an electric market. So in 2016, it was absolutely like ground zero for electric, right? So we did dabble a little bit in electric also. We had a few electric scooters and we were trying to figure out that works or not works. We weren't very clear back then. So we figured that for the next few years, petrol would govern. If we were to build a business, petrol would be the ideal product. But petrol scooters were mechanical in nature, right? Like there is nothing electronic about it, right? So then, how do we make the product autonomous? So we spent, and none of us were hardware engineers, right? Like neither me, Anand, or Sanchit. So Sanchit is our third co-founder. He's also the CTO. So just spend before I get into the business, spend like a few minutes giving their background as well. So Anand is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate. He worked in AstraZeneca post his MBA, and then he obviously the same route, right? So bunch of people at Flipkart. He was very curious about e-commerce, new businesses. So he basically joined Flipkart exactly like me. He joined 3 years there. He managed a bunch of categories. The large appliances category was launched. All your TVs, refrigerators, and anything else that you buy from Flipkart, Anand was the one who initiated it back then. Post his large appliances stint, he also worked on one of the biggest problems of Flipkart was returns. Right? People used to order and then they used to return. So how do you reinventarize, categorize, and make money out of returns? So he handled all of the warehouse returns back then, and how do we monetize that and make sure that we don't lose too much money for the company. Post that, during that time, me and Anand got discussing, and then we took a year to get convinced on the idea of product, and then we basically started up. Anand met Sanchit because Anand had a small stint post Flipkart at housing. Sanchit was the early engineer and product manager at housing, and he met Sanchit back then. And I think somewhere he had kept in mind that technology is what will drive all the what do you say, new businesses. So when we decided on the idea, we went to Sanchit, we explained the idea to him, and he was extremely excited, and he gave up a great at housing and early engineer, right? So he was immediately at the drop of a hat. He was like, okay, guys, I'm really convinced by the idea. I think it's a, and then he basically joined us as well, right? So from the start, all the three of us have been, doing this from 2015, right? So yeah, so that is basically the background of two of my co-founders,
Understood.
right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So so on the business part, right? So we spent a large amount of time figuring out how to develop the hardware. That was very important in making the scooters autonomous, right? So otherwise we'll have to have a guy to have the key and hand over the key to people. So to fit a retrofit IoT, which is basically controlling the scooter on a mechanical device, was extremely difficult and came with a lot of nitty-gritties. I think we spent a considerable amount of time with multiple engineers across the country, top-notch engineers, in figuring out a product. So by latest, by 2017, August, September, we launched our first IoT scooter, and also we launched the facility of moving from point A to point B in multiple micro markets. So big micro markets where we know that people move from point A to point B. These micro markets could be metro to an office, metro is basically metro centric, metros to an office, metros to a college, or there is a residential area and then there is an office area and then people are moving in between, right? So we put all the points there and we put our autonomous, and then we launched it to see what happens. And in a month of launch, we figured that usually when we used to do it before with the keyed scooters, we used to get a ride per scooter per day, right? Like a scooter used to go for one ride, and that shot up to like 3 to 4 rides immediately, because of the fact that now we were able to open multiple points with our people, and we were able to give it at any point of the day, right? Like people can pick it up at any point and drop it. There's no human intervention whatsoever. So this immediately scaled the business 3x from where it was before that, right? And that is when we got very convinced that this product is going to scale multifold across the country. And yes, so after that we went out to raise money. We raised our first round, and then this was in
Paddy,
October. This was in February.
just in keeping consideration of time, maybe jump a couple of years, and I know
Sure.
that as of Jan to March 2020, so 1 year back, you guys were doing roughly 14 crores in annual sales, right? So that for that quarter of Jan to March is the total number of revenue that was being generated, and this was obviously all pre-COVID. Since then, and 14 crores is a great reflection of exactly what you're saying, that a lot of people started finding the use case of having this autonomous vehicle, completely no manual intervention. You just log on the app, book a bike, and you're driving yourself, right? And you drop it off to another location. And I understand you scale to almost 200 locations in Bangalore and Hyderabad, with obviously a large number of users. um, I think what has been really caught my attention as we have spoken over the last couple of weeks, including with Ajitab, is what has happened subsequent to that, right? And a lot of our investors who have participated in other mobility options have seen, or everyone's just tracked how things have got impacted by COVID, especially in the personal mobility area. But you have recorded a phenomenal recovery, and would love to hear that, as well as where you see electric vehicles play a role.
Sure. Cool. So I'll talk about this entire COVID impact and post-COVID impact, right? So a few minutes on that. So what happened was that we raised our Series C just before COVID, and we were set for a complete different path over the last year, right? So we were supposed to grow 5x from where we were pre-COVID, right? Which was Jan to March. Yeah, obviously nobody knew that COVID was going to hit us so hard. COVID hit, and we spent almost 2 months with zero revenue, right? So almost minimal revenue, except for healthcare workers using our scooters back then. We pitched to a lot of healthcare workers and we gave our scooters to them, but the market was literally zero. So we went from few crores a month to almost negligible revenue. During that time, what happened is that all of us had to, on video calls like this, and then we actually started discussing what will happen in the future, right? So who will be the use case, given that offices are not going to open very soon? Our biggest customer is office user, and they've all gone back home, or they're not going to go to office. Who will be our use case? Who will we cater to? What kind of product should we implement so that we cater to the user, right? So then we started brainstorming on the kind of use cases that emerge after COVID, like when the lockdowns open up, right? And it was also a discovery, as in when every lockdown opened up, we discovered that there was a set of users and what product to sell to them, right? So we figured that the commute use case, which is the point A to point B use case, has reduced right? And it was going to grow slowly, right? Like people are not commuting from point A to point B immediately, right? So then we figured that the Vogo Keep, which is the rental use case, right, will become a massive use case. And these are segment. It is not the customer segment, which is your IT employees, the startup employees, and all the the college students. All of those were our biggest target segment back then, and they're actually not commuting anymore, right? But there was a new segment of users. We figured that they were actually now going to work and they didn't have a source of commute, or they were scared of using the existing source of commute, which was a bus or an auto or a shared auto, right? Shared commute. So these were people who were working in small scale industries, who are kirana shop owners or the shopkeepers, who are delivery executives, right? And construction workers, right? So all of the small scale, medium scale enterprises which were live after the lockdowns opened up, these were the consumers, right? And these are the consumers who are going to work and they had multiple other things to do, right? So we cater to them, right? It is we basically created new product portfolios apart from the commute portfolio that we had, and we called it the Vogo Keep portfolio, wherein you can rent the product from a few hours a day to a few days in a month, right? And this basically the audience really well, because that is exactly what they wanted. They wanted to pick up the scooter with no hassle, use it for all of their use cases, because they go to work, then they travel within work because they have multiple users within work, right? And then they drop it back at their own convenience, right? So this product really helped us scale rapidly and attract a lot of consumers, right? So from almost zero revenue, we got up to our pre-COVID numbers at like in December, January, right? And the beauty that happened is COVID also taught us how to be completely frugal and cash efficient, right? So we basically cut any flab that in the unit economics, right? So our major cost structures like parking, manpower, the marketing costs of acquiring a customer. So we went into each and every part, and we basically optimized on each and every part basis what the business needed, right? So we focused not only on getting new set of customers and scaling up the revenue, we focused on ensuring that the costs are so optimized that there is no more flab left out, right? Basically, two things happened. One is that the product portfolio ensured that we onboarded a new set of consumers rapidly. Our revenue grew, and because we optimized on our cost structure, our profit along with our revenue, right? So in the last few months, if you look at our revenue graph goes up like this, and if you look at our profitability also goes up like this, right? So very happy to say that our contribution margin, which is basically any cost associated with running, we have turned positive in Hyderabad, in the city of Hyderabad, and in Bangalore we are very close, right? Like probably a month away from actually attaining the numbers that we attained in Hyderabad. So what I mean by contribution margin is that beyond this, we only have the GNA that is left out, which is basically a scale problem, right? So basically our entire fundamental structure of the business very well established, that from every scooter, it'll actually start generating money. And so basically we need scale to turn the company profitable at a right. So that is exactly what our vision is also for this year, right? So to turn profitable at a PAT level, right? So cash profitability.
And the first time that we looked at your numbers as part of our diligence process, I think we were just shocked, right? We thought something is wrong, because to see margin move that way, and I think in the last 9 months we've probably looked at 60 or 70 different mobility companies, especially e-two-wheelers, and we just haven't seen those kind of numbers and that kind of expansion, recovery of revenue and margin expansion, right? So it was literally a V-shaped recovery. But Paddy, I would request you to go in a little bit more detail to explain how Vogo Keep allows you to reduce the cost, right? How does it take away fueling cost, parking cost? I think that level, a little bit of detail on that would be very helpful for the audience.
Sure. Sure. So Vogo Keep, what it does, see, Vogo now is a product where people pick up the vehicle at a point A and drop it back at point B. The average time duration for a ride is 30-45 minutes, right? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, max 1 hour, right? So what happens is that your inventory moves from one point to another point, and so you have to always provide some other point, right? And imagine few hundred points in the city, which means that every point in the city has to be ample spaced because of the vehicle moving up and down, right? You can predict to a certain degree that you need so much space, but predictions are always not accurate, right? So because of which you'll always space up a little bit more than what is actually required. So if you require X space, you'll always budget for 1.1 or 1.2X, right? Like 10-20% more. So that means that the parking cost bloats up a little bit, right? When an inventory moves from point A to point B, you need to ensure that the inventory is ready for the next customer, right? Which means that now if you need X manpower to do that, now you will also have to budget a little bit more manpower to ensure that the scooter is ready for the next customer, because customer experience is very, very important. I don't want to give a bad scooter to a customer, right? So then your manpower costs are always amplified in the commute model, in the point A to point B model. The third cost is the rebalancing cost, or redeployment cost. What I mean by that is that every point in the city is not a even demand point, right? The demand is not evenly spread across, right? Some points are high, some points are low, and it also depends on the time of the day, right? So mornings and evenings are peak and afternoon lull. So whenever a scooter would move to a point of low demand at any time of the day, you have to spend extra money to generate a ride so that the scooter gets utilized. Or if you can't, if the marketing costs are high to generate a ride there, then you will have to actually move the scooter physically from that particular point to a high demand point, which means that you're now employing trucks, then you employ people there, and then you move the scooter, then that is another added cost, right, in the business, right? And marketing follows that, because now marketing, which could have generated demand for all your even demand points, it is now generating for the low demand points, which means that you always budget a little bit more on the low demand points than the evenly spread marketing. So the marketing also goes up a little bit. So all of this cost structure in a point A to point B business is always higher than if you run it in an even space, right? Like, okay, scooter is taken from here, goes and comes back. This commute business works when there is a lot of demand. So what happens is that it goes from point A to point B, point B to point C, point C to point D, and I generate 4 to 5 rides a day, right? And that is what we used to do pre-COVID, right? So we used to get 4 to 5 rides a scooter, right? But that kind of demand, people are actually moving across the city in a normal scenario, not in a COVID scenario, right? In a COVID scenario, because people don't move for all of their use cases, the use cases are curtailed. So the number of rides that you get per scooter is also curtailed, right? But you are already incurring your cost. You cannot optimize your cost just because you're getting 2 rides. You have to ensure that it's maintained. You have to ensure that the scooter has enough space to be parked, right? You can't, like, your physical asset, right? And so basically what happens is that because the number of rides will be curtailed because of demand, your costs are always going to be fixed in nature, right? This is the commute problem. If there is ample demand, the commute works seamlessly, perfectly well, right? So solves all of this problem. The Vogo Keep solves all of these problems, because a scooter, when it picks up, when it is picked up, the number of packages, which are hours, days, actually, when you add it up, the average inventory days is in a few days, right? So basically what happens is that you have a only floating inventory sitting down, and all the other inventory is out with customers. So immediately you reduce your parking cost, right? Because now you don't have to have so many number of points providing space for the inventory which is moving in hours. Now the inventory is moving in days, right? So immediately your parking cost comes down. Your manpower cost, right? So now the manpower cost is also coming down, because the number of scooters available with you to be maintained to given to the customer is lower, right? You're given to a customer and he's using it for a couple of days, right? And by the time he comes back, so your manpower. So it is all proportional to the business model, right? Same with the marketing. Now I only have even demand points. I don't have low demand points. People are not going there and dropping the vehicle, because they're actually coming back to a high demand point again. So my marketing cost also goes down. So as a function of the business model that we chose, and we decided to run high demand points across the city, we basically cut all of these costs, right, by a significant percentage, right? uh, that is what I talked about, cost optimization. So everywhere we looked at and we ensured that, okay, do we need this or do we not need? Do we need this or do we not? Right? So everything went away this is the functional business model. Then we looked into our maintenance costs, right? So then we figured that there are certain things in terms of your regular servicing that you do, right? So we amplified that a little bit. We changed a few more things so that the regular maintenance, right? So we don't have to do regular maintenance. In a commute model, you don't have so much time. Your inventory is always moving, so you can't take the scooter out, and you can't. So in this model, we had enough time to move the scooter out, ensure that more things were done on the scooter, and so a regular ad hoc maintenance cost also crashed, right? So we did all of these things the customer base for this product, right? And that is exactly how we were able to optimize the cost structure in a considerable fashion than before. I hope that answers.
No, that does. And I think given that we are in that specific transaction that we're doing, we're also talking about electric bikes. And you spoke about how earlier in 2016 it made sense to focus on petrol, but I know that is the next part of your strategy. And if you could just talk about how that further helps you reduce costs, I think that would be interesting.
Absolutely. So electric scooter, it's actually a boon for shared mobility, right? Because of the very fact that it runs on a battery, right? Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So it's a boon for the shared mobility, right? Like because it runs on very low versus look at the petrol cost today, right? It's some 85-90 rupees per liter, right? So whatever happens, your fuel is always going to be about 2 rupees a kilometer, right? Like literally more than 2 rupees a kilometer. But however, the energy cost is 20 paise, 25 paise per kilometer, right? That is where everything starts, right? So immediately my cost structure has dropped 10% of what it was, right? Like at 2 rupees a kilometer versus 25 paise a kilometer, right? It's almost 10% of what it was in a petrol scooter, right? So so electric scooters, the only problem today is the product pricing and quality, right? So you need to find, right? And what do you say, at an optimum price point, right? So for example, I need to give the Activa, right, or the Jupiter that is running in the market today, right? If I give a product which is a little bit lower quality, the customer will not accept. The customer will not switch, right? That has been our hunt in the last 2 years. We have gone across models. We have worked with almost every OEM possible, every big OEM possible in the country. Buying their scooters, putting it in the market, testing it with consumers, taking the feedback, and going back to the OEMs and telling what we think are the changes that need to be done. You have to fix the suspension, you have to fix the tires or your parts or the battery life, all of these things, right? So we have sat an engineering team down in the last 2 years who work specifically on electric vehicles, who basically go back to the OEMs and give feedbacks on what needs to be changed, right? So the COVID scenario has actually accelerated our switch to electric, right? So over this year and next, you will see Vogo put more electric scooters on the ground, and hopefully petrol to electric in the next few years, right? From a unit economics perspective, the energy costs takes away the entire problem in the system from a petrol to electric. The maintenance, right? You don't have any moving parts. You can literally count the number of moving parts, right? So the maintenance cost crashes significantly, right? If in a petrol scooter it is 30-40 paise per kilometer, it will be like sub 10 paise, 15 paise per kilometer in an electric scooter, right? So the energy cost, the maintenance cost simply brings the entire cost structure at the right product quality. I'll be offering the customer a superior product at a much cheaper price point. Now, if I'm offering a product to a customer at 8 rupees a kilometer today, which is again the cheapest possible form of transport in the country, I can start offering an electric scooter at 5 rupees a kilometer or 6 rupees a kilometer. And as we speak about advancements in technology, bringing down the battery costs and scales, economies of scale kicking in and bringing down the price of battery, what will actually happen is that this price that I'm offering to the customer will keep crashing, because the battery is the biggest cost in an electric vehicle.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So absolutely. So in the next few years, as and when things in the global market starts going down in terms of lithium prices and whatever other advancement in technology, you will see that reflecting in the product, which means that we are the end consumers of that product. You'll see that we'll keep adopting the same faster, and we'll be passing on all of those benefits to the consumer, right? Which means that the consumer actually gets a much better, reliable product at probably half or less than half of the cost of a petrol vehicle, right? And I think that is when the true change of petrol to electric switch will happen in the country as well.
Absolutely. No, we are big believers, as you know, especially on electric vehicles, and we have done several transactions with several companies in space. And maybe on that point, Paddy, if you could talk about the competitive landscape. Bangalore, obviously, your home market, has a few other companies who are offering similar services. How do you see that? How do you see some of them transitioning to the new market or the new product proposition that you are doing? And where does the competition lie?
Okay, great. So I think everybody has a different approach, right? So initially, before COVID, the market was micro mobility, which means point A to point B. Any user who is doing that is a user of shared mobility, right? He could be a bus user, cab user, auto user, does not matter. He's moving from one part to the other part, and he is a target customer for shared mobility, and it's a huge market, right? So you can have multiple players in the market, and you can still have space for more people. I mean, that is what I'm a very strong believer of that. Post COVID, I think everybody is everybody, right? Like, so even like, so we have figured out something in the last few months. I think our competitors are also figuring out certain things in their own space, right? I think it is it is an answer that has to be discovered as to what model will scale and work. But I think all of us are actually present everywhere. If you look at our all our competitors, you would see that they are doing petrol, electric, which is Vogo Keep and Vogo Now, right? So it is not like anybody is giving up on anything, right? Like, people are not choosing one for the other. Everybody is keeping an open eye on each and every one of these markets and consumers who are using those products, and ensuring that bandwidth is given to each and every one of these uh, markets, right, and products. And wherever make more sense, right, we are all accelerating there, right? So for example, if in 6 months, if all of us are vaccinated and offices will open up again, then the Vogo Now product, the commute product, will start kicking up, right? Which means that all of us would then push that product hard and serve that consumer, because ultimately we are all here to serve the consumer, right? What the consumer wants is what we need to build, right? So the consumer wants to move from point A to point B, we have to give them that, right? So today it might not be the case, right? So I would actually think that if you ask me, is the market big enough? I think the market is like huge. I would actually say that there can be few more players in the market doing this, because competition breeds innovation, right? And it is better for the consumer, and always the better guy wins, right? I mean, whatever, however it is, and it's a very long-term game. So I think the market is big, very big, and this entire thing is a transition, because we are all living in a space where we are saying that vaccination is going to happen this year, maybe 2021, the entire year it will take. In 2022, it might open up, right? So basically, the way I see it is that the market is huge. I think all our competitors are extremely smart, and we are all in every possible what do you say, product and market, and we are all watching out where the traction is more, and we are giving it more importance. I would put it that way.
Sure. If I can just give you my own perspective on this one.
Sure.
To me, especially as you move from petrol to electric, I think competition itself will change, because the nature of demand of the customer will change. You see, if you look at all the delivery executives, the first batch of delivery executives that came on board were people who had their own bikes, right? If you were to tie up with the Zomato or Flipkart, it was compulsory for you to have your own bike.
Right.
But there is no question that the electric bike is a cheaper proposition. Okay? But no one has an electric bike, right? So if you are a delivery executive, you have no option but to come to a Vogo or any of the other players in the space to rent out the electric bike. And hence then tie yourself with the platform. The same is also true when it comes to personal mobility. The adoption of electric bikes in our own homes or in everyone's homes will happen over a larger period of time, but the cost arbitrage is happening today, which means especially as you think about electric mobility, it is going to be shared, and the adoption will happen from there, right? The second point is absolutely right. The market is so large with so many different use cases, and new ones are getting created as the world changes, and new industries are getting created. Who thought that everything that we wanted will be delivered to our house, right? And there will be so many
Exactly.
direct to consumer brands, and not just the Flipkart and Amazon. If you think about,
Correct.
meat delivery on Licious, or if you think about Dunzo, I mean, these are new business cases that are coming up, which is just expanding the market opportunity.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely agree.
yeah.
I think we are
One of the
working on
questions,
that.
sorry.
I think we are working on that, right? So, for example, when we spoke as well, we were saying that the EV vehicles, there are different kinds of electric vehicles, right? There are your low-powered electric vehicles, there are your high-powered electric vehicles. Even in your low-powered electric vehicles, there are load-carrying low-powered electric vehicles and passenger-carrying low-powered electric. In your
Yeah,
high-powered electric vehicles, you have the same classification there as well, right? So,
yeah,
so it's very interesting. Apart from us serving passenger mobility, right? We were a passenger mobility company. We're still a passenger mobility company, but we are still in the business of renting scooters, right? People are as we spoke last time also, that if there is a delivery executive who's and becomes simpler because he uses an electric vehicle, right? So today, a delivery executive who does 20 orders a day spends around 9,000 rupees on fuel and maintenance of his own vehicle. I can give an
yeah,
electric vehicle to him with his energy cost at a much less price than what he's incurring today with petrol, right? I
yeah,
mean, that really is where things have started to flip, right? Like the amount of interest that we are getting, inbound interest that we are getting today from delivery executives is huge, right? Like people are coming and asking us, okay, can we get more of this product, right? And we really are in a cusp where we're sitting and figuring out what product to give because we've been caught unawares, right? On the low powered electric segment, right? Like we are trying to get more products in, we are trying to supply more inventory in, and it's a good problem to have, right? So this is a huge market. In Bangalore alone, you have more than 30-40,000 delivery executives, right, who use their personal vehicles, right? And you're talking about if they start seeing value in using electric vehicle versus their petrol vehicle, you're talking about more than 200,000 riders in the country, right?
yeah,
You're talking
absolutely.
about 200,000 electric vehicles being deployed to riders and a steady stream of revenue, right? Like you're actually, and it's because it's electric, because you like as a company, I incur very little cost on running the vehicle, right? So the
Yeah,
market just from a delivery only from I'm talking about food delivery. I'm not even talking about e-commerce delivery here. I'm not talking about Flipkart or Amazon or all of the delivery partners who are. I'm just talking about a food delivery business like Swiggy, Zomato or Dunzo or the likes, and
yeah.
they have 150 to 200,000 riders in the country. If you add your
Got it.
Flipkarts and Amazons, and I don't even know how big the market is, right? So
Yeah,
it's all about
yeah.
proving value to the consumer.
Got it. And in this case, do you currently partner with a Swiggy, Zomato, or do you plan to get into some of those partnerships with these platforms, or is it continuing to be just a relationship between you and the delivery executive or the driver?
It is both. No, it is both, right? It is both. So we obviously so as I said again, we can't cross the city. So whoever comes and wants to rent our vehicle are always open. We are always open, right? So it could be the distributor or it could be anybody else, right? So our relationship there is with the consumer. We treat the delivery executive as a consumer, right? Like it is not a B2B, right? It's a B2C. Apart from that, we also have conversations with see and pitch it's a Swiggy going and that see you can save so much amount of money and you can make more if you use this product versus we advertising from outside. I think it is much more better that Swiggy, because they all trust Swiggy and Zomato as a brand, right? I mean, and I'm sure you've seen a couple of days back, Mr. Deepinder Goyal actually had tweeted that they've increased the compensation for delivery executives, right? So these companies care about their executives because they're their the delivery executives is the lifeline, and us as a rental company is providing a value added service to ensure that the delivery executive makes more money, right, for himself,
Absolutely.
vehicle and whatever. So we partner with everybody apart direct marketing strategies. We also partner with all of them so that they can go and explain what the value is. You have to really go and explain because the delivery executive is smart. He calculates what money he takes to himself at the end of the day, right? So you need to tell him to make more money using this versus his own vehicle, right? And that is where I think Swiggy and Zomato are committed to doing this because they right, instead of making them spend more. And I've talked to these guys and I know that they really believe in this as a value, right? And so it makes us to participate with them and understand from them what needs to change in our product build so that we can actually build it out for the delivery as well. So in the future, you will see us offering vehicles which are specific to passenger mobility, which will be light, just for them to use, and for the delivery segment.
Understood. Okay, makes sense. Paddy, could you, last question, then we'll get into some of the deal specifics, but could you just talk about your expansion plans in terms of cities? And is franchising something that you're looking at to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, Nikhil. So yes, so we think that this is the right time to expand. It comes from this decision does not come from growth point, it comes from our margin point of our margin structure, right? So we think that we'll be present in a few cities in this year, right? As part of our expansion plan, because we know that money for us, no matter where we are. So that is one reason where we took the decision to start expanding to multiple cities. So we'll be present in a few cities like Gurgaon, Chandigarh, Ahmedabad, etc. It is also one of the things is also the tier two city play. We want to see how tier two cities respond to our product, right? And we'll be introducing a lot of electric vehicles there because it makes a lot of sense in tier two cities because the choices are limited. People are looking for a nice product, and for us, a low price profitable product is our electric vehicle. So you'll be seeing us expand into cities and doing a mix of petrol and electric. We would try to focus more on electric, and we'll see how the demand progresses there. That is one. The second interesting thing is obviously the franchisee concept that we are starting to see a lot of interest from a lot of small businesses, right? Who are like shops. This is exactly like the battery swapping vendor. So I'm sure a lot of electric manufacturers or electric players setups in kirana shops or other kinds of small businesses where they provide the battery infra and the battery swapping infra, right? And they pay money per swap, right? So we have gotten a lot of inbound interest from people asking us if we would be willing to extend our franchisees to them because we piloted a few franchises and the word has gotten out that our franchise at a unit level. And so if you typically see a kirana makes 15,000-20,000 a month, right? 15,000 odd a month. And by putting a few, he can make few thousand rupees more, right? He can make 30% of his income just by putting a few scooters out there, right? And it is also a cheap investment to make. So we think that potential, and it is also a way to scale inorganically, right? Will make money. I think that we'll be able to attract a lot of franchisee will be wanting to partner with us, and I think the whole ecosystem will start when it reaches a particular threshold. So I think these are the two other large plans we have, which is the expansion into cities and franchising a lot more than we have done before. On
Understood.
quality and control, which has been our strength, right? So the reason why we did not franchise too much is because of that. But I think in our initial part, how to do the quality control there as well. And we believe very strongly that franchising will be a great opportunity.
Okay. No, I agree, and I think it's a great way to scale, capital efficient way to scale as well. Paddy, congratulations on the recent fundraise. We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but just for I think everyone must have seen the press release. But you guys raised close to 86 crores, and largely from your existing investors. You can correct, but I would guess that is on the back of this great improvement in both your recovery, or in both of your revenues and margins, and the change in story.
Right.
But any other insights from that fundraising that you would like to share?
Right. So a little bit I would like to share is that when we went to absolute point zero, it was our board who supported us through and through. They were with us during that tough time, saying that, guys, things will come back. It is not the world is going to end, right? As entrepreneurs, as founders, you guys need to figure out a way to sustain, right, and conserve, right? Please figure it out so that you can sustain and conserve during these dark periods, and start going to the drawing board and shed all your preconceived notions and start going to the drawing board thinking from scratch. Think about that this is day of Vogo, and how would you want to build, right? So literally, like, this was the summary of all the conversations, right? It was a very interesting insight, because it really made us go there, right? And when we really thought who will the consumer be, and we rethought our product entirely. So it's always this connecting the dots, Vanda. I'm sure you would have Steve Jobs' Stanford speech. He always talks about connecting dots where you can't look forward and connect dots. You can always look backwards. So in April of 2020, we didn't know what the dots were. So we went back to the drawing board. We sat down and we made charts about who the consumer is, what he will use for, and hours and hours every day. I don't know how many hours we spent, or hundreds of hours, I would say, on calls and sitting and just discussing who the consumer will be, why will he use our product, what will he use it for, how to each and every product. I think that is where it became very interesting. And we did that with a lot of conviction that when things come back, this will work. We believed in it strongly. And then we launched that product when things started coming back. And then we pushed the product out as much as possible across the city. Our board always supported us, saying that, when in need, we are here. Keep building the business, get your house in order, right? Don't worry about it. And I think the period between September to December, where we started every month progressing upwards in terms of and profitability, I think our board started seeing a lot of confidence in us, right? Like they started seeing that, even in times of crisis, they've seen us execute in good. They also saw us execute in bad times, right? I think I'm going to take it as a credit and say, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, I think our board has been extremely supportive. They came through. They said, guys, this is great. We are very happy, and we would like to, keep doing this, right? So it was. I would actually say that it was not like a, what do you say? Whatever, in need fund. It was not like, oh, you are in need and I will give you money. I think it was more of a belief fund, saying that you guys are going to execute this, and you guys are going to sustain and build something large, even though there is a crisis out there. I would actually term it like that. right?
Got it.
So
Okay. No,
that is what
that's very
is the
very
belief.
interesting. Very interesting to hear, and I think that's the kind of support companies require in these times. But
Yeah.
from all our conversations, including this one, you come across as a very very thoughtful founder and a very thoughtful company who are really
Thank you.
understanding the fundamentals of the business that you're building, right? And really looking at the key ingredients that will make it successful. And I think companies who we've seen being able to innovate with the challenging times, whether it's from a technology, business model, cash flow perspective, whatever it may be, I think the ones that are going to come out much, much stronger out of this, right? And there will be a lot of companies that unfortunately don't come out of COVID. But the companies that do come out are because they've innovated, they've been open to, as you said, challenge any preconceived notions. And well, it will be an interesting time subsequently. Um,
Absolutely.
I'll take the last couple of minutes just to talk about the transaction, and you can add something if I've missed. Um, for all of our audience, the transaction is to lease electric bikes to Vogo for their operations in Bangalore and Hyderabad. Vogo will be operating these bikes as they normally do for their entire fleet of 9,000 vehicles, and paying our investors a monthly rental, and at the end of the lease term also a residual value when the bikes will be transferred to Vogo and they will continue to use them as part of their operations. The maintenance, the utilization of these vehicles will be the responsibility of Vogo, and investors are purely earning a monthly rental for providing these vehicles. So that's the construct. Vogo is also paying a security deposit as a gesture of goodwill, which is about 4 months of rental, and this is something that will be available to investors as part of their own cash flow. Yeah, so that's the nature of the transaction. And we launched this yesterday. As I mentioned, we've seen already a good level of traction, and we hope to keep building on it and providing such options to our investors going forward. Awesome. Paddy, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. Something for, I think the level of detail that you explained things in, especially from a business model perspective, and how some of those dynamics work in a point-to-point mobility, very useful. Some of these conversations don't seem typical for a leasing company, but I think it's very, you have to lease behind the company, apart from leasing the asset. And I think that insight was very helpful to us as well as to our investors. So thank you so much for taking time on a Sunday morning. I'm
Sure.
sure you have a lot of things to get back to. I'd like to also thank our audience for joining us, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you have. Please reach out to your relationship manager or to us, and we'll make sure we coordinate with Paddy to get you those responses. Great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much, Nikhil. Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to the conversation. Uh, Very happy to be here and looking to be on Grip platform even more than this, right? This, I think, is the start. And I think
Absolutely.
in the coming years, I think we'll be more and more actively present on the platform.
No, sounds good. Same here. We look forward to that.
Thank you very
Perfect.
much, Nikhil. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you, Paddy. Thank you so much.